The signal arrived at exactly 3:17 Universal Time Coordinated. No warning, no distortion, no origin that could be traced. Every satellite, military, civilian, private, received it at the same time. Every screen flickered. Every network was overridden. Planes in midair, submarines beneath the ocean, phones in the hands of billions. All of them froze for a fraction of a second. And then the message appeared. A symbol first. Something no human language could replicate, yet everyone understood instinctively. It meant authority. Absolute authority. Then came the translation. Clear, cold, unmistakable. This is the dominion of Threx. Your planet is now under our claim. Cities went silent. Not gradually. Instantly. New York, Beijing, London, Karachi, Lagos, Sao Paulo. Silence. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. Then the message continued. You are granted 72 of your hours to surrender all governing control. Resistance will result in immediate extermination. A pause, as if whatever was out there was watching. This is not a negotiation. The transmission ended, and for 3 full seconds, no one on Earth moved. Panic didn't erupt right away. That was the strange part. There were no immediate riots. No screams filling the streets. Just a suffocating stillness, as if humanity collectively held its breath, waiting for someone, anyone, to say it wasn't real. But it was. Within minutes, observatories confirmed it. Something was in orbit. No, many things. They hadn't been there before. Massive structures, too large to be satellites, too precise to be natural. They hung above the atmosphere like silent judges, blocking out stars as they moved into position. The world's militaries went to full alert. Fighter jets scrambled. Missile systems activated. Nuclear protocols were quietly unlocked. But no one fired, because deep down, everyone understood the same terrifying truth. If something could appear above Earth without being detected, it wasn't something humanity could fight. Emergency meetings were called across the globe. Within 2 hours, the United Nations convened an emergency session, the largest in human history. Leaders argued. Generals demanded action. Scientists begged for time. 72 hours is nothing, one delegate said, voice shaking. We can't even coordinate a unified response in that time. It's not meant to be fair, another replied. It's meant to be final. Images from telescopes were projected onto massive screens. The alien ships, if they could even be called ships, didn't resemble anything human. No engines. No visible weapons. Just vast, geometric structures that seemed to bend light around them. They're not just advanced, a physicist whispered. They're beyond us. So we surrender, a general snapped. No one answered. 3 hours after the message, the aliens spoke again. This time, it wasn't to the whole world. It was directed to one place. The United Nations headquarters. The signal bypassed every security system as if they didn't exist. The main assembly screen lit up without warning. A figure appeared. Tall, thin, not quite solid. Its form shimmered, like it wasn't fully present in reality. Its face, if it had one, was smooth, featureless, yet somehow expressive. When it spoke, its voice wasn't heard. It was felt. You will designate a representative. The room froze. One individual will speak for your species. A pause. You have 1 hour. The screen went dark. The argument that followed was unlike anything in human history. Every nation wanted control. Every leader believed they, or their people, should represent Earth. But time was running out. 50 minutes. 40. 30. Voices grew louder. Accusations sharper. Old rivalries resurfaced in the worst possible moment, until someone said it. Not a politician. The room quieted. We need someone who won't panic. Someone who understands strategy, but also people. A diplomat? Someone suggested. No, another replied. Someone better. A name was spoken. At first, only a few recognized it. Then more, and more, until the room fell into a different kind of silence. Not fear. Consideration. 20 minutes later, a secure line connected to a small, unremarkable office halfway across the world. The man who answered didn't look surprised. "Ah," he said calmly, as if he'd been expecting the call. "So they've finally decided to say hello." "Ambassador," the voice on the other end said urgently, "we need you in New York. Immediately." A brief pause. "Do I get to ask questions?" "No time." Another pause. Then, quietly, "Of course there isn't." 17 minutes later, a military jet was in the air. 15 minutes after that, the world's most powerful leaders watched in silence as the chosen representative walked into the United Nations chamber. He wasn't what most people expected. No uniform. No imposing presence. Just a simple suit. Slightly wrinkled. Calm eyes. Steady steps. He looked ordinary, until you noticed the way everyone else reacted to him. Generals straightened. Politicians stopped talking. Even the most hardened officials seemed relieved. "Ambassador Elias Vance," the Secretary-General said, his voice tight, "you've been chosen to represent humanity." Vance nodded once. "Understood. They're expecting a response," someone added. "We don't know what they'll do if—" "I know what they'll do," Vance interrupted gently. The room went still. "You do?" a general asked. Vance looked up at the darkened screen where the alien had appeared. "Yes," he said quietly. "They'll wait." A pause. "Because they're curious." The hour ended. Right on time. The screen flickered back to life. The alien figure returned. "Have you chosen?" Every eye turned to Vance. He stepped forward, calm, unhurried, and for just a moment, he smiled. "Yes," he said. "You're speaking to him." The alien tilted its head, just slightly. "Then speak." And in that moment, with the fate of Earth hanging by a thread, Ambassador Elias Vance said something no one in that room, or on that planet, expected. He chuckled. Softly. 72 hours? He shook his head. "You won't last 3 seconds." For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. No alarms. No retaliation. No immediate destruction raining down from the alien fleet hanging silently above Earth. Just silence. But this time, it was different. It wasn't fear. It was confusion. Across the United Nations chamber, leaders stared at Ambassador Elias Vance like he had just signed the planet's death warrant. A general near the back actually took a step forward, as if to physically stop whatever came next, but it was already too late. The words were out, and they could not be taken back. The alien figure did not move, but something changed. The air itself seemed to tighten, like an invisible pressure had settled over the room. Screens flickered. Lights dimmed, not from power loss, but as if reality itself had briefly hesitated. When the entity finally responded, its voice was still calm, still controlled, but no longer indifferent. "Clarify your statement." A murmur rippled through the chamber. "Clarify," someone whispered. "That's what it says." "They didn't attack," another said, disbelief creeping into his voice. At the front, Vance remained perfectly still, unbothered. If anything, he looked more relaxed than before. "You issued a timeline," Vance said, his tone conversational, almost polite. 72 hours for surrender. A slight tilt of his head. "That suggests you believe you have control of the situation." The alien figure seemed to sharpen, its form becoming slightly more defined. "We do." Vance smiled again. Not mocking, not aggressive, just certain. "No," he said gently. "You really don't." A collective breath caught in the room. Somewhere behind him, someone muttered, "What is he doing?" For the first time, the alien did not respond immediately. And that was new. Across the globe, billions watched the exchange in real time. Every device, every screen still linked to the same unstoppable transmission. People who had spent the last few hours preparing for the end of the world now leaned closer instead. Because something felt off. The alien spoke again. "Your species is technologically inferior. Your defenses are ineffective. Your extinction is a trivial calculation." A pause. "Explain your confidence." Vance clasped his hands behind his back, as if he was standing in a lecture hall instead of facing an interstellar threat. "Because," he said calmly, "you made a mistake." The alien's form flickered. "Specify." Vance took a single step forward. "Every movement deliberate, measured." "You announced yourselves," he said, "globally, simultaneously, with overwhelming force." A small nod. Classic intimidation strategy. No reaction from the alien. But the pressure in the room increased. "You gave us a deadline," Vance continued, "which means you're not here to destroy us immediately. Another step. You want something. A flicker. Barely noticeable. But it was there. And most importantly," Vance's eyes narrowed slightly, just enough to shift the tone, "you're still talking." The silence that followed felt heavier than anything before it. Around the world, analysts, military strategists, and intelligence agencies scrambled to keep up. "He's probing them," one expert said. "No," another replied, eyes locked on the screen. "He's baiting them." The alien finally spoke. Slower this time. More deliberate. "We are extending an opportunity for compliance." Vance nodded. "Of course you are." A pause. Then, softly, "But not because you're merciful." The alien's form distorted, just for a split second. "It's because you're unsure." The reaction was immediate. Not from weapons, not from ships, but from the signal itself. For the first time since it began, the transmission glitched. A sharp burst of static cut through the audio. The image fractured for a fraction of a second before stabilizing again. Inside the UN chamber, several technicians froze. "Did you see that?" one whispered. "That wasn't us." Vance saw it too, and his smile widened, just slightly. "Incorrect," the alien said, its voice now carrying a faint, almost imperceptible edge. "We possess full situational awareness." "Do you?" Vance asked quietly. He turned, gesturing toward the massive screen displaying the alien fleet in orbit. Because from where I'm standing. A brief pause. It looks like you're waiting. The alien did not respond. Vance let the silence stretch. 1 second. 2. 3. Then he spoke again. And this time, his voice dropped just enough to change everything. "You've been here for hours," he said. "Long enough to wipe us out 1,000 times over." His gaze sharpened. "But you didn't." Across the planet, people began to realize what he was implying. "You scanned us," Vance continued, "analyzed our technology, our defenses, our communications." A slight tilt of his head. "And then you stopped." The alien's form flickered again, more noticeably this time. "Why?" Vance asked. No answer. And that was the answer. A ripple of unease spread, not across Earth, but through the alien presence itself. It was subtle, barely detectable, but it was there. Vance took one final step forward, now standing directly before the screen, face to whatever the entity was. "You found something," he said softly, "something you didn't expect." The room felt like it was holding its breath again. But this time, it wasn't humanity. The alien's voice returned. Lower, more controlled, but no longer perfectly steady. "State your conclusion." Vance didn't hesitate. "You don't understand us," he said. A pause. "And that scares you." The screen flickered violently. For half a second, the alien form fractured into something wrong, something far less composed. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Then, stability returned. But the illusion was broken. For the first time since the arrival of the Dominion of Threx, they didn't look invincible. They looked uncertain. And Vance? He smiled. "Now," he said calmly, "we can start the real conversation." For the first time since the arrival of the Dominion of Threx, the balance shifted. Not in firepower, not in technology, but in something far more dangerous. Perception. Inside the United Nations chamber, no one spoke. No one moved. Because everyone understood, even if they couldn't fully explain it, that Ambassador Elias Vance had just done the impossible. He made the aliens hesitate. The entity on the screen remained still. Too still. Its form, once fluid and controlled, now held a faint instability, like a reflection in disturbed water. When it spoke again, the voice was different. Still powerful. Still invasive. But now, precise. Measured. Careful. Elaborate, it said. Vance didn't answer immediately. Instead, he began to pace slowly, just a few steps, hands still behind his back. Not nervous energy. Calculated movement. He was thinking, and more importantly, he was letting them think. "You scanned us," Vance said at last. "That much is obvious." He glanced up at the massive projection of their ships. "You mapped our weapons, our infrastructure, our digital networks. A small node. You learned everything you could in the shortest possible time. No denial came. And then," Vance continued, "you ran simulations. Across the globe, experts leaned forward. Because this was the part they hadn't considered. You simulated invasion scenarios," Vance said. "Occupation timelines. Resistance probabilities." He stopped pacing, turned back to the entity. "And somewhere in those calculations." A pause. "You got a result you didn't like." The alien's form flickered again, sharper this time. Your inference is speculative. Vance tilted his head slightly. Is it? He raised a hand, pointing, not at the alien, but at the world map displayed behind him. You looked at our history, he said. Every war, every alliance, every collapse. His voice remained calm, but it carried weight now. You saw a species that fights itself constantly. A faint smile. Messy. Divided. Predictable. A pause. And then you looked closer. The room felt colder. You saw something else, Vance said. The alien did not respond, but its silence was no longer controlled. You saw that we don't just fight each other, Vance continued. We adapt. Images began appearing on screens across the chamber, pulled automatically from global archives. Wars. Disasters. Moments where humanity should have broken, but didn't. We lose, Vance said. A lot. A beat. But we learn faster than we lose. The alien's form distorted, subtly, but unmistakably. You ran your models, Vance said, stepping closer again. In some, you win quickly. A nod. In others, you take longer. Another step. But in a few. His eyes locked onto the entity. You don't win at all. Silence. Around the world, people felt it. That shift. That crack in certainty. The alien finally spoke. Impossible. The word echoed differently, less like a statement, more like resistance. Vance's expression didn't change. No, he said quietly. Unlikely. He let that sit. Because that's the thing about us, Vance continued. You're stronger, smarter, more advanced. A small shrug. No argument there. Another step forward. But you're also consistent. The alien's voice sharpened. Explain. Vance's smile returned. But now, there was something behind it. You follow logic, he said. Clean. Structured. Efficient. He gestured lightly. You make optimal decisions. A pause. We don't. A few confused glances spread across the chamber. Vance continued. We make irrational choices. Emotional ones. His voice lowered slightly. We sacrifice advantage for principle. We fight battles we can't win. The alien's form stabilized slightly, as if regaining ground. That is weakness. And for the first time, Vance shook his head. No, he said. It's unpredictability. The word hit harder than anything before it. You can model strength, Vance said. You can calculate intelligence. A step closer. But you can't fully predict a species that will burn its own world before surrendering it. The room went completely still. And you saw that, Vance added softly. In your simulations. The alien didn't answer. Because it didn't need to. The truth was already there. You're not here to conquer us, Vance said. You're here to decide if you should. A long silence followed. Then, for the first time since the beginning, the alien asked a question. What did you mean by 3 seconds? A ripple went through the room. That was it. That was the moment. Vance stopped moving entirely. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter than ever. But every word landed like gravity. It means, he said, that if you actually try to take this planet, a pause. You won't have 72 hours. Another pause. You won't have 72 minutes. The alien's form flickered again. more violently this time. Vance leaned in slightly. "You'll have 3 seconds," he said. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, waiting, because now, even the aliens were listening, and Vance hadn't explained it yet. No one breathed. Not in the United Nations chamber. Not in the control rooms buried beneath mountains. Not in the billions of homes across Earth where people stood frozen in front of glowing screens. Because now, it wasn't just about survival. It was about the answer. The alien presence loomed silently above the planet. Vast, unfathomable, patient, but no longer certain. On the screen, the entity's form pulsed faintly, its edges no longer perfectly defined. "Explain," it demanded. This time, the word wasn't calm. It wasn't measured. It carried something new. Urgency. Ambassador Elias Vance didn't answer immediately. Of course he didn't. He let the silence stretch just long enough to matter. Just long enough to make them feel it. Then, he raised his hand. "Show them," he said. Across the chamber, several officials froze. "Show them," one whispered. "Show them what?" But someone already understood. A technician, pale and wide-eyed, turned toward a secured console. "Authorization code?" he asked, voice shaking. Vance didn't look at him. "Global clearance," he said calmly. The room erupted. "You can't be serious. That's classified. Do you have any idea what you're—" "Do it," the Secretary-General snapped. Silence fell again. A single key was pressed, and everything changed. Across every screen on Earth, the image shifted. The alien figure vanished, replaced by something far more human. A clock. Digital. Precise. 3 seconds. A murmur of confusion spread instantly. "What is this?" "A timer." It started counting down. 2 seconds. Vance finally spoke. "This," he said, "is how long it takes." 1 second. The alien's voice cut in sharply. "What is the meaning of this display?" Vance didn't look at the screen. He was watching the room. Watching the reactions. Watching humanity remember. Midnight. The clock hit 0. Nothing happened. For a moment, it seemed almost anticlimactic. A few confused voices broke out. "That's it. What was that supposed to?" Then, the feed changed again, and the past came alive. Footage. Archived. Classified. Never meant to be seen. A missile silo. Deep underground. Cold War era. A young officer sat alone in a control room, alarms blaring around him. Sweat ran down his face. His hands trembled over a panel of switches. A voice echoed through the recording. "Launch detected. Confirm retaliation." The officer hesitated. 3 seconds. He closed his eyes. And he didn't press the button. The footage froze. The chamber was silent. Across the world, people began to understand. "That was real," someone whispered. Vance nodded slightly. "One decision," he said. 3 seconds. The screen shifted again. A different moment. Different time. A submarine. Dark. Silent. Hidden beneath miles of ocean. Another officer. Another warning. Another choice. Again. 3 seconds. Again. No launch. The footage froze. Vance turned back to the alien. "We've been here before," he said quietly. The alien didn't respond, because now it was watching, really watching. The screen changed again, faster now. Moments throughout human history. Nuclear close calls, military standoffs, split-second decisions that could have ended everything. Each one the same. 3 seconds. Choice, restraint, or destruction. The images stopped. The alien reappeared. But it looked different now. Less composed. "These events are irrelevant," it said, though its voice lacked the certainty from before. Vance's eyes hardened. "No," he said. "They're the only thing that matters." He stepped forward again. "You ran your simulations," he continued. "You calculated our weapons." A small gesture toward the sky. "You measured our capabilities." A pause. "But you misunderstood something critical." The alien remained silent, waiting. Vance took one final step. "You assumed," he said, "that we need time to decide." The room felt like it shrank. "But we don't," he continued. Another pause. "Because when we're pushed far enough." His voice dropped. "We don't hesitate." The alien's form flickered violently. "Clarify your threat." Vance didn't blink. "It's not a threat," he said. "A beat. It's a fact." He gestured to the screen behind him. "Those were the moments we stopped ourselves." Silence. Then, "What do you think happens?" Vance's gaze locked onto the entity. "When we don't." For the first time since their arrival, the alien had no immediate response. And somewhere far above Earth, among the silent, watching structures, something shifted. Not an attack, not a retreat, but movement. Small, hesitant, uncertain. And for the first time in human history, it wasn't humanity that was afraid of the sky. The chamber was quiet, too quiet. Not the tense silence of fear. Not the waiting for an explosion silence. This was the kind of silence that carried gravity, weight enough to bend time itself. Because everyone understood the truth. The aliens weren't invincible. They weren't omnipotent. They were precise, powerful. But they had just learned something about humanity that no technology could measure. Ambassador Elias Vance stepped forward. Every eye in the room, every camera in the world, every consciousness connected through the alien signal, focused on him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gesture wildly. He simply smiled. Calm, confident, almost human. "The 3 seconds I spoke of," he said softly, letting each word land like a hammer, "aren't hypothetical." He gestured toward the feed showing Earth's past close calls, the nuclear near-misses, the standoffs where humanity had chosen restraint. They were moments when the world held its breath, just like we are doing now. Decisions that would have destroyed everything, if we had hesitated differently. A pause. Those 3 seconds weren't about hesitation. They were about choice. And if we had learned anything from them, it's that when we are truly pushed, when survival isn't a theory, we do not hesitate. A ripple ran through the alien signal. For the first time, Vance could feel uncertainty emanating from it. Something deep, primal even. The alien figure leaned slightly forward, or at least gave the impression it had, edges shimmering. Its calm authority had wavered. "You speak boldly," the alien said, its voice no longer cold, but sharp. "Measured. Calculating." "I speak truth," Vance replied. He took a small step closer to the screen. His eyes narrowed, gaze locking onto the entity's shifting form. "You tested us. You scanned us. You ran your calculations. You predicted everything you could, except what happens when a species refuses to surrender its own will. The alien form flickered, visibly disturbed. It spoke again, but this time its words carried something else: curiosity, hesitation, even fear. You claim control over your own survival in defiance of logic? Vance nodded. Logic assumes there's a single solution. But we're humans. We improvise. We sacrifice. We adapt. We push past the limits you assume define us. He smiled again, this time broader. Not arrogance. Not mockery. Confidence. You thought 72 hours would be enough to bend us. But you don't understand human resilience. We survive because we choose to survive, even against odds you calculate as absolute. The alien figure paused, long enough for the room to feel frozen in time. Then it said, carefully, "And the 3 seconds?" Vance leaned slightly closer to the screen, eyes glinting. "The 3 seconds," he said quietly, "are all it would take for humanity to retaliate if you tried anything reckless. A heartbeat. 3 seconds is how long it takes for a coordinated response, for a million hidden systems across the planet to activate, for every contingency we've secretly built over decades to unfold." Another pause. 72 hours to surrender? Too slow. You don't get that long. The alien shimmered violently. A subtle edge of panic, or what resembled panic, crept into its form. For the first time, Vance realized, they were calculating against something they couldn't fully simulate. Something unpredictable. Something terrifying. Then he said it, the words that carried the weight of every human who had ever fought impossible odds. "You won't last 3 seconds. Silence. Absolute silence." It wasn't the absence of sound. It was the absence of certainty. The dominion of Threx had arrived confident, powerful, unwavering, and now, for the first time, they hesitated. Outside, billions of people watched the exchange. But nobody cheered. Nobody celebrated. Not yet. Because humanity's victory wasn't in destroying the aliens. It was in surviving, outlasting, showing that no matter how powerful the enemy, the human spirit, its creativity, courage, and unpredictability, was something no calculation could ever conquer. The alien figure pulsed again, slower this time. The perfect, cold lines of its form flickered as if struggling to maintain composure. Finally, it spoke. "We will withdraw our immediate demands. You have proven unpredictability beyond expectation." The words echoed across every screen, every speaker, every device. And the world exhaled. Vance turned to the assembly, calm as ever. "They tested us," he said softly, "and we didn't just survive. We reminded them who they're dealing with." The room erupted, not in panic, not in fear, but in controlled, quiet relief. Military officers straightened. Politicians relaxed. Scientists and engineers exchanged glances that said everything. Humanity had just survived an encounter that could have ended it all. Vance looked back at the screen one last time. The alien fleet above Earth shimmered, then slowly began to retreat. Not in defeat, exactly, but in acknowledgement. Not conquerors. Observers. Hesitant, uneasy observers. And in that moment, one universal truth became clear. Humanity didn't need 72 hours to assert its will. It didn't need weapons more advanced than the stars. It only needed the courage to act, the will to resist, and the resolve to face the impossible. In the 3 seconds that mattered most, across the globe, a quiet smile spread among billions. Because no matter what came next, Humanity had reminded the universe of something essential. You don't threaten humanity without counting on the unexpected, without respecting the impossible, without fearing what 3 seconds could unleash. And somewhere, in the distance beyond Earth's atmosphere, the aliens recalculated everything they thought they knew. For the first time, the game had changed.